Welcome back to the Dark Paranormal's YouTube channel. And before we get into today's true paranormal experience, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a video. So today's true paranormal experience comes in from our listener Kyle. And Kyle lives in South Australia along with his family. And this experience took place in 2014 when Kyle was around 15 years of age. Now, one week, Kyle's family decide they're going to have a lovely 3-day extended weekend at a lovely scenic place called the Barossa Valley. And they've booked a nice cottage called the Cabernet Cottage to do so. But Kyle isn't really a going on a scenic break sort of kid. He likes keeping to himself and playing video games with his friends. And so the Friday that everyone's due to leave, his mother, his sister, and his grandparents, they all go Friday morning, but Kyle says he's going to hang around for his dad to finish work around 6 p.m, and he'll join them all later. So eventually his dad finishes work, he picks him up, and they drive about an hour and a half to the Barossa Valley. When they arrive, they're greeted by Kyle's sister, who, very confused looking, says, "Where did you all go before?" Kyle and his dad are equally confused and say, "We've literally just arrived." But Kyle's mother comes to the door and says, "No, a white van pulled up about 3 hours ago, and we heard 2 lots of footsteps come up to the door. You knocked 3 times, but by the time we got to the door, you just both disappeared." Kyle and his dad look at each other and shrug. They don't know what to say. They know exactly where they've been and they've not been here 3 hours before. So everyone kind of shrugs it off. And the mother thinks maybe it was just an errant delivery driver who got the wrong address. So they enter the property and they look around and it's beautiful. It's a 4-bedroom place. It's got 2 main bedrooms, a master bedroom, another large bedroom which features a huge wooden 4-poster bed, literally with a roof on top. It must have weighed an absolute ton. And 2 small dorm rooms, one for Kyle and one for his sister. So they all unpack and they settle in for the night, and they start a roaring fire in the living room. And the granddad comes in with a load of logs and says, "Well, that's the last of the firewood. I'll have to go into town in the morning and get some more." So as they all start to settle down, Kyle's mother says to Kyle, "Kyle, do me a favour. Go into the master bedroom and get the brown laptop bag." So Kyle says, "Fine, okay." He goes into the room and there is one brown bag sat in the middle of the master bedroom. So he picks it up. And as he does, he gets a chill down his spine. Something doesn't feel right. But he takes the bag in anyway and gives it to his mother. And his mother says, "What the hell is that?" Kyle says, "That's the bag that you asked me to go and get." She says, "That's not the bag. I've never seen that before in my life." His sister says the same. She says, "That doesn't belong to me." So Kyle's dad grabs the bag and takes a look inside. And inside, there's a lot of women's clothes all neatly packed and folded, and underwear and socks and a bonnet. And Kyle's dad looks up and says, "Do you know what this is?" Everybody shakes their head. And he informs them all it's a death bag. He goes on to explain it's a bag that someone prepares when they know they're going into hospital for the final time. Now this freaks Kyle's mother out, and she's already a believer in the supernatural and the paranormal, so she's already getting a bit of a shiver down her spine. So she says to Kyle, "Take that back to where you got it from immediately." So he does so. And a few hours go by and Kyle's mother goes into the bedroom and she comes storming back out. And she says, "I thought I told you to put that bag exactly where you found it in the middle of the room." Kyle says, "I did. I put it down exactly where I found it." The mother then freaks out a bit and says, "Well, it's not there now and I can't find it anywhere." She's so scared, she says to Kyle and his sister, "I don't want you sleeping in separate rooms tonight. I want you both to sleep in the living room." So they're both children. What are they going to do? They both agree to sleep together in the living room. Kyle on the couch, his sister on the floor. That evening, around 4 a.m, Kyle needs to go to the toilet. The only trouble is, the one toilet in the whole cottage is in his mum and dad's bedroom, and he obviously doesn't want to disturb them at 4 a.m. So he decides he'll go outside in the bushes. So Kyle goes outside and he does his business in the bushes, but all the while he feels like he's getting watched. So he quickly zips himself back up and heads back indoors, but as he's going in, he notices that the pallet where the firewood is kept is fully stocked. He can't understand why his granddad said there was no firewood left. So he tries the handle of the door to go back in, but it won't budge. He starts freaking out. He feels like he's getting watched more and more. Eventually he just screams, and his mother comes and opens the door to see what all the commotion is about. And Kyle says, "Oh, I was just so cold." He doesn't want to make out that he's a coward or that he's scared. His mother checks the door and says, "How did you lock yourself out? There's no lock on this door." So obviously that night Kyle gets zero sleep. The next day the family decide they're going to go for a lovely meal in a local town, but his sister isn't feeling too good. So his dad says he'll hang around with the sister and maybe join them later on at the pub for a drink. Now Kyle stresses that his dad is a skeptic. He doesn't believe in the paranormal, he's got no time for it. Kyle's dad and sister, who's feeling much better, eventually turn up at the pub. But Kyle's dad seems disturbed. He's quite pale. And his mother says, "What's wrong?" And Kyle's dad says, "I can't believe I'm even saying this, but we weren't alone in the house earlier. Someone was walking around and whistling and knocking on the walls." Everyone laughed because they couldn't believe that this was coming from Kyle's dad's mouth. He was such a rational and skeptical man, but no, he was deadly serious. He sincerely heard somebody walking around, whistling and tapping on the walls. The next afternoon, one of Kyle's friends came over to join them, and he was going to stay for the final night. So Kyle and he stayed up and watched some wrestling DVDs, and they were just enjoying themselves. It was about midnight, when all of a sudden, there's a blood-curdling scream coming from the grandparents' bedroom. Everyone darted into that bedroom to see what was going on. And the grandfather was saying, "She's going to kill me, get her off me, she's going to kill me." As he says this, all the lights in the cottage go out. So everyone fumbles for the phone to get the torches out. And when they do, they realise that now, the bed, the 4-poster heavy bed, is hovering about 10 inches off the floor. As they're watching in disbelief at this floating bed, it flies across the room and slams into the wall. Kyle's granddad gets out of bed and feels something wet on his arm. When they shine their torches on Kyle's granddad's arm, it's dripping with blood, and none of them know why. But Kyle's grandmother finally speaks, and she explains why. She says she awoke to an elderly woman in a floral dress, about an inch from her face, strangling her. She can't remember anything else other than the fact she had blank white eyes and was squeezing around her throat so tightly she couldn't breathe. In an effort to try and escape, she clung out at anything she could, and the first thing she found was her husband's arm, and she dug her nails so deep into his arm that she managed to pierce the skin. Eventually, the lights all come back on, and the family decide, no, we're not having this at all. So they ring the police, they ring the owner of the property, and they all sit in the living room and wait for them to arrive. When they do finally arrive, the police are a bit dumbfounded. They don't know exactly what to do. There's been no break-in, there's no evidence of anything. They ask the grandmother to describe the lady, and it's at that point the grandmother realises she can do more than describe the lady. she can point out exactly what she was wearing. And that's because the death bag had appeared in the room again. And inside that death bag was a floral dress. The exact floral dress that was on the woman with the blank white eyes that was strangling the life out of Kyle's grandmother. The owner then turns up of the property. He says he's never seen that bag before in his life, and he's never had any complaints like this before. Which I guess you would say if you're trying to maintain a business. But either way, that was enough for Kyle and his family. And they packed up immediately and left that night. They decided to take the death bag and leave it out on the porch. And as they drove away, the last thing Kyle remembers is seeing that death bag just sat there on the wooden steps of that cottage. Kyle says he still has nightmares that his bed is floating and there's a woman in a floral dress stood next to it, waiting to pounce. And although he says that's probably just night terrors, part of him does think, what if it's not? What if, by disturbing the death bag, he's inadvertently brought something back with him? We hear lots of stories on the Dark Paranormal podcast about people who find objects or items and take them home thinking they're just a unique, quirky thing of interest, only to find there's some malevolent spirit or entity attached. And what do you do when you've inadvertently brought some sort of evil terror into your own home? I sure as hell don't know. And hopefully I'll never find out. Well, I look forward to bringing you more from the Dark Paranormal podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time here on the Dark Paranormal YouTube channel. Bye for now.